Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Keith from Addressable. You were probably expecting, some of you, to see Asaf. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it today, personal reasons. So I'm filling in. I'm the better looking one than Asaf. So, prestigious company today. Looking forward to some of the questions I've got to ask. So let's dive straight in. Addressable, who are we? If you don't know us, Web3 companies, we help them acquire new high volume users. It means matching on-chain activity to marketing efforts, help them understand what drives the deposits, the trades, the revenue, and it means better CAC, targeting, and it helps us scale campaigns towards what's working best. So we'll go along to Axel.
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Axel. I'm the region lead for West Europe for Base. Hope everyone knows what Base is, but we're in L2, incubated by Coinbase, and really excited to be here.
Hello everyone, I'm Andre. I'm CEO and co-founder of Tenderly. So we've been in the space for the past 8 years or so and have been helping the best of the industry push out the new and the new versions of their protocols and continue innovating in the space.
Hi, I'm Steve. I'm on the BD team at Sonic Labs. Sonic is a high-performance L1.
Hey guys, I'm Matt. I work at Off-Chain Labs. We build Arbitrum, a scaling solution for Ethereum, Prism, a consensus client for L1, and ZeroDev, a modular smart account framework. Happy to be here.
Hi guys, my name is Shady Damaty. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Holonym. We're building a stack called human.tech, which is technology for keeping humans in the loop when interacting with autonomous software. So what does that mean? It means things like smart contracts or AI or agents. We do that in two ways: with proof of personhood, prove who the humans are, and by giving humans the ability to exert control, by giving them keys, wallets, and safe secret management.
Cool. So I'm going to start with the title. Infrastructure is ready, but is it? That's the question. What's the most critical infrastructure gap that's still holding back real adoption? Let's start with Axel again.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the question is, it depends how you define ready. I think if you think of it in terms of scalability, we've come a long way. Obviously, there's still room for innovation, but I think the biggest gap we still have is usability, right? So right now, using crypto, while you can transact very fast and for very low fees, it still requires a lot of context. So what that means is you need to know what a wallet is, you need to deal with things like seed phrases, and that's cool for everyone here in the room, but when we're thinking about onboarding the next billion of people on chain, I think that's not sufficient. So where the big gap is, how can we make crypto for the everyday user a little bit more invisible, a little bit more frictionless, so the average person does not necessarily need to know that they're using crypto. They just should be able to reap the benefits, such as low transaction fees, such as composability, such as ownership of assets through control, without having to deal with all the complexity. And I think that's currently where the big gap is when we're talking about whether infrastructure is ready or not. Once again, scalability, there's still a way to go, but that's where I think right now the biggest gap is.
I think it's perfect that we're sitting next to each other, because my follow-up to that would be, on top of thinking about the end user, we also need to be thinking about the operator of all of these protocols, these networks. I mean, we've gone a long way since the early days of crypto, where you just deploy a bunch of smart contracts and you've got a product. If we want to onboard and support the billions and billions of users, the organizations that are doing that are going to be put under a lot more stress. These are going to be larger, more complex organizations that are going to be interfacing with the blockchain on a day-to-day level a lot more and with a lot more assets under their fingers. And I think they still need a lot of infrastructure to help do that safely.
Yeah, I think Axel hit the nail on the head there. It's definitely too complex for the average user I mean, users shouldn't be expected to know what RPCs are. Wallets are still engineered for power users. Transaction simulations are still quite complex to read as a human. Yeah, I think abstracting a lot of that stuff away through account abstraction, chain abstraction, gas subsidization, all necessary in order to be able to onboard more people. And that's definitely the biggest gap for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of those points. I think we still have a long way to go in terms of raw throughput on the technology. A lot of chains can post high numbers, but they break at those numbers. So we're nowhere near the limit of where performance will be. And I think in order to support high frequency trading across the world, we have probably a couple orders of magnitude remaining before we even see real adoption of the tech. I would say a big barrier for users and operators alike is that because of all the factors you all just mentioned, we don't have any meaningful backstop or insurance against errors or hacks that happen on the network. So if you're not a DAO that had a successful token launch and something happens to a large liquidity pool on your protocol, the users will never get their money back, right? In a traditional banking system, you have a guarantee from either the government or a partner that you're interacting with that you will be repaid for an error because they're holding your funds. Obviously, in a self-custodial world, that can be perceived as true as you are holding it, but you're actually holding it on a network. So without the counterparty risk adjustment and insurance, there really isn't going to be meaningful adoption.
That's a great point. That's like the most compelling point I've heard so far. If I could, be the bun on the side of the sandwich of this line of thought, I think it's interesting though, like when we talk about gaps, infrastructure gaps, we tend to treat them as static, but gaps can change over time. And one question I ask myself constantly is like, why is Web3 so complex? Like during DevConnect, excuse me, there was a really big concerted effort within the Ethereum community to embed the tech in the totality of the experience, right? We had Para for the account creation. We had Peanut protocol for doing payments. Peanut's amazing. For actually like buying pizza in Argentina. Now the conditions for that to occur in Argentina were very kind of special because of the issues that they had with inflation, which made product market fit a little bit more, let's say, attainable in that area. So yeah, I think like what's happening is that the gaps are changing. It's kind of the bounds of what we're engineering for are changing constantly, and Web3 tech is complicated by design. So I think it's a question with a lot of nuance and complexity. It really depends on the market you're trying to fit.
A lot of good points, a lot of agreements. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into some of the points you've made and how they relate to what you're doing with your business. So individually, Axel, I've got a question for you. Base has seen strong builder traction. At what point does infrastructure maturity stop being the bottleneck and the problem shifts towards, I don't know, something completely different?
That's a good question. I think we're seeing that shift sort of already happen. So if we think about, so I spend most of my day speaking with tons of builders, right? And I think the main concern right now that they have is less necessary the infrastructure and the performance of the infrastructure. Yeah, I think we can still go a long way with scaling. It's a little bit like a cat and mouse game. Whenever there's new capacity, builders find new way to use it. But I'm optimistic that this sort of gets solved continuously. So what the most frequent issue is other things, right? So how can I onboard many builders? So that's still a large friction point, is actually onboarding people to crypto, right? Yeah. How can I have discoverability about whatever I'm building? So we're talking about distribution. So these are more the common pain points that many builders have. And for Base, what we do is we try to build tools that enable builders build better products that more people want to use, that maybe raises more attention because they're very innovative. So we're working on things like on-chain kit, app kit, agent kit, so builders can really build innovative products, and that solves this issue of getting in front of as many people as possible because they're just building awesome products. Just
touching on that, you're in charge of Western Europe. Does it change geographically when you speak to your colleagues?
Yeah, I mean, what you see is throughout the world, there's it's always a case of the future's already there. It's maybe not evenly distributed, and with crypto, obviously, that's also true. So what you say is, in some parts of the world, there's maybe less of a hesitancy to touch crypto. But what I would say is that what we build on is a global economy, right? So our vision is that actually builders can build for a global audience from day one. And because if you build something in a DeFi product, you can essentially distribute it to all over the world, and that's actually a very strong selling proposition for building in crypto. And so to some extent, there's some variance from region to region, but the common themes really are, how can I make my product better? How can I onboard users in a less friction, with less friction? And how can I reach that global audience? And so I would say, on average, there's more similarities than differences.
Excellent. I'm going to jump to Matt, Off-Chain Labs. I know you've been pushing the boundaries of L2 scaling. When you look at what's been built, what's still missing in the stack for mainstream applications to work reliably?
L2s are just general blockchain protocol. That was a question for you. Between the two, L2s as a primitive or blockchains generally.
Yeah, both.
Just general.
Yeah, just general.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot missing. Speaking as like a maybe more practical person, I think we've seen a lot of progress in the last few months, actually a few weeks. If you think about regulation in the States, again, the U.S. is not the center of attention. Very well aware. I grew up on an island in the middle of the Pacific, so I have a perspective on the U.S.'s, American exceptionalism. But historically, they tend to set the standard for regulation across the globe. I think a lack of clarity on what will be enforced versus what will not be enforced creates a huge problem for teams that are trying to innovate on chain, and especially legacy institutions that have the right to issue and allow and facilitate trade of assets that are real. Right? If you look at a lot of trade on chain, most of what's being traded has no intrinsic value, right? There's no utility on the other side of the trade. It's a purely speculative relationship between the trader and another party. If you look at the traditional markets, people are trading over hard metals, over real estate, over utility futures, over things that can be exchanged for something that provides real value to the end user. That will not move on chain until those institutions know that they can and they won't be penalized for it. And until we get that, and we're making progress, I think we're very close, we're not going to see the adoption we want. The other thing I would say, and then I'll shut up, is I think we're missing kind of a canonical standard for asset interoperability across chains. This is a good problem. There are many protocols that are actively trying to win and be the product of choice. But I think until we kind of come to an agreement on what that standard is, we're going to see those protocols fighting for business with the institutions I'm just talking about, and that's going to lead to a continued fragmented experience for users trying to trade these assets across multiple chains.
Yeah. Good answer. Steve, Sonic is focused on performance at chain level. Is the industry over-investing in speed and throughput while under-investing in layers that actually touch the actual users?
Well, I mean, at Sonic, when the network was being developed, I mean, throughput and latency are absolutely a priority, because for good UX, you need to have quick final transactions. Nobody wants to wait 12 seconds. Nobody wants a 7-day window. Things have to be quick. But once you've gotten to the point where latency is low enough and throughput is high enough, at that point, yeah, you need to start looking at, gas abstraction, account abstraction, making things much less complex and giving the tools to the developers so that they can do that. Definitely we need to continue trying to increase throughput on these networks if we're ever going to, attain, billions of people using this, but definitely need to also concentrate on simplifying things if you ever want to onboard. So I think you need to do both. You need to focus on having those things at the chain level, but then also having the tools there for the developers to actually onboard people.
Cool. Shady, last but not least. I was going to ask you a different question, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, is working at the intersection of identity and infrastructure, how much of the adoption gap is a technology problem versus we don't understand our users problem?
That's a really good question. To zoom out just a little bit, I think one personally useful as a founder, kind of trying to sense make what the opportunities are. is a thesis that emerged, I think like in 2017 or something, as a response to the FAT protocol thesis. This idea that, okay, well, Bitcoin, is the OG, it's the settlement layer, but it could be improved. So if what you really want to do is build this new L1 that's really performant, this amazing infrastructure that can be the universal settlement layer for all interactions on the internet. And VCs have been playing that treasure hunt game for the past 10 years now, right? So that's the FAT protocol thesis, that if you own the rails, you own the plumbing, you own the future. Now, a little bit after that came this response, which is like, no, infrastructure on its own doesn't get you anywhere. And then the emergence of this FAT app thesis emerged, or I like to think of it as like the FAT wallet thesis. The FAT wallet thesis is this idea that actually whoever owns the distribution layer, whoever's at the interface closest to the user, is going to be who wins, who owns distribution, and everything else falls out of that. Identity falls out of that, wallets fall out of that, trading falls out of that, and all middlemen will be disintermediated. So do we actually see evidence of this happening today? We do. If you take a look at, I don't know if they're doing this intentionally or not, or they're thinking about these things or not, but maybe there's a convergent or divergent discovery of these things. But for example, World App, World Chain, Uni App, Uni Chain, Uniswap, you've got Base App, Base Chain, and a bunch of other supporting infrastructure there. So this is happening. Now, from where I'm sitting as a founder of not a multi-billion-dollar company, and where I see the opportunities, I really think that some of the assumptions from 2017, 2018 are being challenged again, especially now that, I hate to say the word AI, now that that's here, it's really forcing us to rethink about what's worth building or not. And I believe a lot of the infrastructure we take for granted, like wallets, for example, I think they might be dead in 9 months. I don't think we're going to have point-and-click interfaces. I think a lot of that stuff, a lot of the challenges we're expecting might dissolve into the background, and then that adoption moment might be a little closer.
Yeah. I've got a question for all of you now. There's an interesting tension that I've been seeing between chains optimizing for developer experience, again, versus optimizing for the end user experience. Are we building infrastructure at the moment for builders, or are we for the building for the people who actually use the apps?
Yeah, maybe I can start.
Yes, go.
I don't really see the dichotomy, right? So I think if you believe in the flywheel where builders create value for users and users use the products and bring more capital on chain, I think you should optimize for both, right? So you need to have a very good experience for builders and support builders as good as possible. That are things like have infrastructure, have frameworks like AgentKit, and so builders can innovate with having agents on chain. And I agree there's potentially a huge shift in how we use products, not just in crypto, but in any sort of product. And if smart builders figure something out that's an actual innovation that will attract new users, right? Now, on the other hand of the coin, you also need to make it as an infrastructure potentially easy to onboard users, right? So you can have a very good product, but if the hurdle to adopt that infrastructure is too high on the user end, that product may not be able to create new users on chain. So I think you need to work on both ends here to get that flywheel spinning, and we're spending efforts on both sides. So we're trying to have a very good user experience with things like the base app, but we're also trying to have a good builder experience with toolkits like AgentKit, AppKit, yeah.
Andre, agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree that it should be a balance, but I also think it's important for us to recognize that we as an industry over-index on building for the builders so much and so intuitively that it might be time to, as much as it hurts me, say that, okay, we should prioritize users as much as we can, and then let our nature sort of bring us towards the middle, because we couldn't necessarily forget it completely. I think this is sort of happening these days from what we've been able to see. So much less complexity these days in terms of the solutions being built, and more emphasis on, okay, but is this actually solving problems for someone? Is this patching some gap, some hole towards broader adoption? I do think the space is thinking about that a lot more than, let's say, 2 years ago. I think this is the collective struggle sort of bringing in some priorities in front of us. But yeah, I would say let's just focus on the users, and we won't be able to resist helping each other at least a little bit. So I think that's where I would put it.
Similar but slightly different. Steve?
Yeah, again, I agree with Axel. I don't think you can have one without the other. You have to look at both sides of the coins. Your tech stack has to be able to provide a good user experience for users. You need, the chain needs to have on-ramps, that's not really related to the devs, but you also have to have the tooling there for the developers to allow them to build their products in the ways that they want to. And yeah, like without one side of that, you're not going to work. You have to have both.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think where that tension shows up the most in my work is in the MEV space, or transaction ordering. That's where you see this real tension between protocols wanting to get as much liquidity as possible because that begets more liquidity and more users. But in order to get the initial liquidity or to grow it substantially, you have to make choices around picking winners. And then you have to make choices around helping those winners make more money because, as a world in the capitalist structure, we have this view that like growth should be permanent and infinite, which I disagree with. But to support that as a business, you have to make sure that these protocols can make more money. And the way they do that is by benefiting from user order flow. So in a way, many protocols are optimized to help applications extract value from retail. And on the other side, something that should be valued more, something that we value, at least when building Arbitrum, is protecting users from certain attack vectors in the MEV space. For example, like front running is not really possible on Arbitrum due to the way our sequencing works. But this tension shows up a lot. And I think, again, as the industry grows, we're going to see this become very, very apparent that protocols are making trade-offs to benefit the power structures that hold the ability to issue assets that users want to trade. So it will exist in perpetuity, but I do agree with all the points that we have to balance them.
Yeah, that there's this, I think to summarize, there's this idea of a business to builder, a different B2B type of loop where it's somewhat virtuous. The labs co puts money into the ecosystem, builders come, patch up the gaps, and then you rely on the builders to understand the consumers or take risks and try new things. And then as consumers come in, then you have, that's like the beautiful thing about Web3 is this network effect where with ecosystem interoperability, the thesis is as one app wins, it creates space for other types of apps to differentiate and win as well. Why haven't we seen that yet? I think, this is, like tech has been evolving since, the internet, right? And there are tons of apex predators already out there. There's already Venmo, there's already PayPal, there's already Bank of America. And so we're really fighting a narrative battle and trying to make a difference in people's lives in this way. So yeah, I think when it comes to what we can do meaningfully today is, okay, where is that virtuous loop maybe siphoning off value in places where it's not effective, right? So are there consumer applications that would be better benefited than, say, hackathon projects to create a new meme coin launch platform? Are there other risks that we should be taking to attract not just this very slim sliver of a demographic of, like 21 to 35-year-olds that like want to, throw money at something and maybe make it big? Maybe there's other types of primitives or other types of use cases that these primitives empower, and we just, because of the demographic of the people building in the space, yeah.
Prioritizing. So if I could put you all on the spot a little bit, if you could mass upgrade one piece of Web3 infrastructure overnight, which one would you choose and why would you choose it?
I got one. I think chain-agnostic balances are the most important user functionality that we can push for. We're pushing for it, so I'm incredibly biased, but we talked, I think some of you hinted at this point before, you have many accounts across many wallets. The way that different protocols across the EVM and Altel ones do cryptography actually is different. So having money on all these different protocols and being able to spend them across them is not easily done. And when you use protocols that let you do that today, the vast majority of them, rightfully so, add another trust assumption to that transaction journey to fulfill your request on the destination chain, which just breaks the whole trust model that you started out with when you entered the blockchain that you're transacting on. And so that just creates this like vast gap between the user expectation and understanding and what is actually happening on chain. Not to mention, then you can't use all of your money to make a trade where you see the value. So until we get that, and I think it will come within the next 6 months, things are going to continue to be broken, and a lot of protocols that do the same thing but are basic copy and paste of each other will continue to exist. Once that happens, we'll see mass consolidation of the canonical types of trading protocols.
Yeah, I would build on the cross-chain asset piece, but I'd like to see cross-chain communication get on the same level too. I mean, that's one of the things that I like about blockchain the most, the fact that you have the whole world right there, and you can go far beyond just assets and introduce logic and rules and all of the fun stuff that we've been able to do on a single network. If you can extend that and have it span this complex web of networks with different properties, capabilities, purposes, I think that's sort of the holy grail for me, and I'd like to see that happen. Probably not in the next 6 months, but sometime soon.
I mean, personally, one thing I'd like to see would be standardization across auditing for smart contracts, and also more implementation of live monitoring and pausing of smart contracts. I think as long as we keep having these big exploits, it's going to be really hard to attract mass adoption in institutions. And until we get that under wraps, it's going to be difficult. So if I could flip a switch, it would probably be that one.
I have two, but I'm not going to say much about them. One is maybe timely. Post-quantum, I think, is something we should be thinking about. And two, privacy. Those are my main two, yeah.
I don't want to sound redundant, but I think just ease of use, particularly across the entire landscape. So I think we've solved large parts of UX issues on an anecdotal level for certain applications, and we're working really hard on the onboarding aspect with the base app and just making it invisible for easy transaction. But then when it comes to using a wider array of applications, sometimes then it can become more complex. And I think that's still a largely underestimated issue. Is just we need to be able to make crypto on a large basis pretty much invisible and still give that benefit of using on-chain infrastructure to the user.
Well, we're absolutely bang on time, so I just want to thank the panelists. I've learnt loads. I hope you've learnt loads. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.